China's Belt and Road Initiative is the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern history. It spans over 60 countries and will cost over $1 trillion. The plan is to make it easier for the world to trade with China, by funding roads, railways, pipelines, and other infrastructure projects in Asia and Africa. China is loaning trillions of dollars to any country that's willing to participate, and it's been a big hit with the less democratic countries in the region. This makes the BRI a risky plan as well. But China is pushing forward because its goals are not strictly economic, they're also geopolitical. China is creating in cooperation with other countries, in the context of the One Belt, One Road initiative to improve transportation, intensify trade and boost the respective economies with the broader aim of extending China's economic and political presence across the globe and ultimately reaching the vast European market. China's outstanding growth in recent decades has been centrally fueled by this same type of international trade. We have seen time and time again in our videos that by embracing their huge productive capacity they have made themselves the workshop of the world. The Belt and Road Initiative furthers their ability to prosper off their ability to add value through the intense industry, but sometimes these sorts of things don't actually work out, in reality, the idealistic notion of economic theories. Let's talk about one of the biggest projects of Belt and Road Initiative continuing in the Pakistan-China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Support us by subscribing to our channel. The CPEC should pass through Pakistan to connect China's landlocked Xinjiang province with the Arabian Sea, and it pursues multiple objectives. First, Xinjiang hosts significant natural resources but is economically poor and affected by discontent among the local Uyghur population. With CPEC and other region-focused projects, China wants to develop the area so to improve its living conditions, exploit its economic assets, and make of it a crossroad for East-West trade. Secondly, China wants to open alternative access to the ocean. Today, cargoes sailing to and from Europe as well as oil tankers from the Middle East need to pass through Malacca and other straits, which are extremely vulnerable choke points that could easily be blocked by the U.S. Navy in case of war. This would be catastrophic for China, which consequently wants to have access to the sea that avoids these exposed passages. Finally, CPEC will foster relations with Pakistan. The two countries are already primary partners, and the project will create closer ties by increasing economic interdependency and by improving the living condition of locals. A solid bilateral partnership is also mutually beneficial considering their relations with India. But especially for Pakistan, having China as an ally is extremely useful to keep India at bay, but the contrary it is also true, even though Beijing tries to downplay the existing problems with New Delhi. To reach these strategic objectives, China plans to build a series of infrastructure projects in Pakistan. Up to now, it has already invested at least $60 billion in the initiative, which includes motorways, railways, ports, electric power plants, pipelines and more. Several special economic zones will also be established. All these projects will be connected one with the other to some degree, with the aim to create economic prosperity and link Xinjiang with Pakistan's southern shores. A particular relevance has been given to Gwadar, located in southwestern Pakistan along the coast next to Iran. It will be the endpoint of CPEC, and one of its main centers. In particular, Gwadar's harbor is being expanded and upgraded. It will be transformed into a smart port surrounded by a special economic zone that will host a large industrial area. It will be served by a new international airport, several facilities to improve the local living conditions, and it will be linked with the rest of the country and with China by road and train. The port became partially operational in November 2016, when a joint Sino-Pakistani truck convoy successfully traveled from north to south across Pakistan and reached Gwadar, where the containers were shipped to overseas destinations. Yet, the remaining projects are still under construction. As far as other components are concerned, 9 of them are already operational. Another 13 facilities are being completed and are scheduled to become soon operational. Yet, there have been some setbacks as well. Combined with Pakistan's shaky financial condition, this has raised doubts over the general tenure of the CPEC project. The first aspect to consider is that Pakistan's political and financial situation is not very promising for the future of CPEC. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was a supporter of the project, but in August 2018 he was substituted by Mr. Imran Khan, who on the contrary has criticized the initiative out of concerns over corruption and lack of transparency. Pakistan has also complained that the billions of dollars that China is investing in the country brings little benefit to Pakistani workers, as the facilities are almost entirely built by Chinese nationals. This does not mean that Pakistan has rejected CPEC, but Pakistan is certainly less enthusiastic about it than his predecessor. In addition, Pakistan is crossing troubled waters in financial terms. According to the Express Tribune, a Pakistani newspaper, the country owes $40 billion to China. This has raised the alarm over a debt trap, meaning that China may exploit its financial leverage on Pakistan to exert political influence. In this regard, it is true that Pakistan's net public debt is estimated at 67.6% of GDP, that its external debt amounted to $82 billion at the end of 2019, and that the federal government must face chronic penury of foreign currency, which is a problem when having to repay external debts. Therefore, there are doubts about Pakistan's financial tenure in the immediate future. The country received various loans from the IMF in the past, but it has rejected the latest $8 billion bailout plan. Instead, Mr. Khan's government preferred to demand financial aid to a few friendly countries, notably Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and China. This has already brought some fruits. An agreement has been reached between Islamabad and Abu Dhabi for a support package worth $6.2 billion, with $3 billion scheduled to be sent shortly. Similarly, Saudi Arabia's prince will soon sign a deal for building a $10 billion oil refinery in Gwadar, thus adding further significance to the port city. Cooperation in other sectors will also be discussed. In regard to China, the situation is more complex. Bilateral relations remain good, but there are growing concerns about the completion of CPEC, at least in all of its parts. In the context of its troubled financial situation, Pakistan has recently announced its withdrawal from the Rahim Yar Khan power station, on the basis that electricity production capability is already sufficient and that consequently the project will not be economically viable. Yet, this may be a political excuse to hide the real problem, namely that there are not the funds for it. In addition, there are delays in the construction of the smart port in Gwadar. In this regard, Chinese companies have allegedly warned that Pakistan will need to pay to cover the additional costs caused by this postponement. These events have created much speculation about the completion of the CPEC as a whole, especially in India, where major newspapers like the Times of India have reported such news. As a matter of fact, there is a sensible degree of strategic rivalry between Beijing and New Delhi, who perceives its northern neighbor and its close ties with Islamabad as a potential threat. On its part, China has responded to the recent events along a double line. State-sponsored media, like the Global Times, have published articles where they reassure the solidity of the Sino-Pakistani partnership and about the determination of both sides to end the works on CPEC. At the same time, they have accused other countries of being jealous and of having aggressive intentions. It is clear that the message was a response to the news about the recent setbacks of the CPEC project reported by Indian media. By explicitly addressing the recent reports by Indian news channels, the Global Times has also downplayed the entity of Pakistan's China-owned debt and have suggested third parties not to meddle in this issue, all while affirming that India will also benefit from CPEC. According to such Chinese articles, which cite China's embassy in Pakistan as a source for the figures, Islamabad does not owe $40 billion to Beijing. Instead, they claim the debt only amounts to over $6 billion, including interest. Apart from this, the security aspect should also be mentioned. CPEC crosses territories where terrorist and separatist groups are present. Some of them do not see China favorably, and this represents a non-negligible threat to the project. In fact, some attacks have already taken place against Chinese objectives. In August 2018, a suicide bombing injured some Chinese engineers. In November, a secessionist movement called the Balochistan Liberation Army targeted the Chinese consulate in Karachi. Up to now, none of these events has seriously hampered CPEC, but this may be the beginning of a trend that could hamper the project in the long term. With such contradictory reports, it is difficult to assess the future of CPEC and the real entity of the China-led debt trap looming over Pakistan. What is sure though is that Islamabad has indeed some financial problems and that this may negatively impact the project. The recent cancellation of the new power plant and the delays over Gwadar's smart port suggest that there may already be complications in this sense. Yet, unless Pakistan enters in a serious financial crisis or faces a collapse of the state, it seems that the project will be completed at least in part. That said, the other certain thing is that CPEC and China's presence in Pakistan is not viewed positively by India, and in geopolitical terms, this is probably the most relevant aspect. China is a ruthless economic force, but if a nation can properly embrace this project, it's likely that they will receive genuine prosperity from it, even if this prosperity is under the thumb of a central authority like China. So I guess we can give our checklist a tick here too, even if it's a slightly smaller one, which leads us on to the final piece. Thank you for watching it till the end. You are like a family member. If you want me to make a video on any topic, comment down.